Excellent. Okay, so let's begin this. Thank you for joining us today. I do want to say that it is our intention to be under an hour. We don't want to waste your time, and we are going to get to the important stuff first as well. But let me just say, first of all, this is an extraordinary time that we're in for College Radio, and we thought it was a good idea to have a meeting like this to bring us all together. A lot of questions and concerns that we might have, and I want to thank particularly the CBI and John Morris as well, for basically merging these groups together, because at a time like this, we're all in this together, and we're all in the same boat, and that is College Radio. So I want to thank CBI for their support of this event. I want to thank obviously David Oxenford for actually coming along and being with us today to answer some serious questions about the FCC implications of this current time. Also want to thank Annabella Poland, who's president of College Radio Day and GM at WMSC Montclair State University, and Sean McDonald, a director at Newman Media at Newman University, also part of the CRD task force. The way it's going to work is I've got a brief statement from the College Radio Foundation that I want to say. It's about 3 minutes. Then we're going to get straight into it with David, because we've got some important questions we need to investigate and ask about what's going on, and in terms of our obligations to the FCC, etc. At the conclusion of David's comments, we will actually be taking. I have two questions here that were sent in advance, but we will be inviting questions from you, and the best way to do that, Annabella, throughout this entire thing, will be moderator. The best way to do that is to use the Zoom group chat window, which you can see on the right, which I shall say hello. Please type your question there. Raise your hand if you wish to say anything or ask a question, and type your question there, and then we plan to get to those questions. We want this next hour or so, less than an hour, to be helpful and useful, and to answer your questions, what questions you may have. So we want to be nothing but useful here in this session today. So thank you, each and every one of you, for coming. And I want to start off by just saying a few things myself on behalf of the College Radio Foundation. A statement, if you will. So the impact of the coronavirus has been significant. The difficult situation that many educational institutions find themselves in, of closing campus access down to the community that uses it, affects College Radio uniquely, and requires us to do to ask some questions of how we continue to operate and what exactly we should do. Now, for example, what does the current environment demand of College Radio? What is it that we need to do? What are our FCC obligations during this time? How can we all share the burden that we face together? How can College Radio continue to function and even provide an important reminder to a world public that radio is a lifeline and a source of important information in a time of crisis? On a smaller level, what can College Radio demonstrate to a university administration that it is not simply a fun activity like other student groups on campus, but has a much larger reach beyond the university? In a press conference just a couple of days ago, on March 17th, Federal Communications Commission Chairman Ajit Pai said that broadcasters are ideally situated to the task of informing the public about important news, updates, and developments during this time. Now, when the College Radio Foundation took a group of College Radio students to the FCC building in Washington, D.C. back in September 2018, we met with Ajit Pai in person, who said on record that College Radio, quote, has long been a staple of the campus experience, providing a platform for students to have their voices heard and the opportunity to shape their identities. And College Radio has united listeners across the country and throughout the world. So College Radio has an important role to play, just as other broadcasters are also seeing what they can do at this time. So for our students, though, the impact from these campus closures has been quite decisive. From what we have seen so far, there's been a profound loss of social interaction among our students, and because they're no longer able to access the radio station and broadcast as usual and do their shows as usual, there's been a loss of a creative outlet and a means of communication for them. The radio station offices are also typically a place where many students feel a second home from home, and the loss of that social space to connect with other students involved with the radio station has been genuinely upsetting for them. Yet it's not just obviously the students who are feeling this as well. Many people are feeling the anxiety and loneliness of a suddenly enforced period of self-isolation. Welcome to my home office. There's a risk that during this time that we can lose some balance or perspective in what occupies our thoughts and become too focused on every bit of new information about the coronavirus. And that means we do run the risk of decreasing doing other activities that bring us happiness, fun, and relaxation. One recent article in Wired magazine called "Don't Go Down a Coronavirus Anxiety Spiral" suggests that to maintain a healthy mental state, we should limit how much information we consume about the coronavirus outbreak. Indeed, we should try to find a balance between being informed enough to make decisions about your life, but not so overloaded with information that it becomes stressful. And that seems like reasonable advice to me. We need to keep things in perspective, and we need to be calm if we can. My former mentor at London University, Professor Tim Quicke, now president of the Chartered Institute of Journalists in the UK, asserts that the media now have a responsibility to show leadership, calm, and perspective. College radio can do that. That calm approach should be reflected in the way that we operate our college radio stations right now. So I believe, and the College Radio Foundation believes, that during this time, college radio stations do not need to disappear. There are things that can be done even when students are not on campus. There is even a possibility that college radio stations could play an important role in providing information to the campus community and the local communities in which they reside and serve. Even with the transmitters shut down, college radio stations and those that operate them, the faculty, staff, students, and community volunteers can still create community and content that can be shared with a wider audience. College radio can also continue to serve as an important outlet for student expression and creativity. It's just that we perhaps need to use different tools to do so. There's no reason why college radio needs to be silent during this time. We just need to adapt to these current circumstances. We need to work together to ensure that the medium continues its important work of providing voices that are not heard anywhere else, and music and programming that no one else will play on the air. So yes, this is a challenging time, but now more than ever, we believe that college radio is up to the task. So that is a statement from the College Radio Foundation where we stand on this, and I know we all have our different thoughts and opinions, but what I'd like to do right now is to, because this is pretty serious time, and we're going to get the serious stuff done up front, and we're very, very delighted to have David Oxenford, an attorney with expertise concerning the FCC and broadcasting, join us and answer several questions, because this is an interesting time in terms of station renewals, in terms of EAS requirements and other questions and matters like that. I'd like to invite David to spend a few moments to speak to us and to ask him also, David, what are some of the common questions and concerns that you've been hearing from college radio stations?
Sure, thanks. And that was a great introduction that you provided. The college radio station certainly can be an important place for students to just hang out and have their social lives centered around. I remember from my days back in college radio, that's really what it was. To think that the radio stations would be shut down during a time period like this, in many cases they can be very important to address the needs of a campus community. Is surprising, but given the access restrictions that are being put on many universities, I can see how that can happen with universities not wanting to take the risk of spreading the infection, not wanting to take the risk of having gatherings on their campus. They are restricting access to all facilities, including those facilities at the campus radio stations. And that's certainly an issue that's within the discretion of the university. The college or university who is the licensee gets to make those choices as to who gets access to their station. From the FCC's point of view, they put out a public notice last Thursday that college radio stations that decide not to operate because the students aren't on campus, because students have been blocked from being on campus, will essentially be considered under the FCC rules to be on recess, meaning that they don't have to meet the minimum operating requirements that are specified by the FCC rules. They don't have to ask for special temporary authority to be silent. It's just like the periods over Christmas holiday or spring break or during summer vacation when the students aren't there to operate the stations. Stations are allowed to be silent, and that can be the same situation right now when the students are blocked from being on campus. That if your station is silent, that's going to eliminate some of the issues about EAS. Obviously, you don't have to do EAS alerts or pass on EAS alerts if your station is silent. What your operating logs can simply say the station was silent during those periods. So that's not going to be an issue as well. Where there will still be issues, though, is in the general FCC filing requirements. The FCC, even though there are few, if any, employees at their headquarters right now, they shut down last Thursday as well, sending everybody home to telework. They are, in fact, teleworking. They are putting out orders every day, even though there's nobody at the physical facilities down here in Southwest Washington. That means that all FCC filing requirements as of this point continue in effect. So on April 10th, you'll have quarterly issues programs lists that will be due in your online public file. And since that online public inspection file can be accessed by anybody, anywhere who's got an internet connection, you're going to need to have your public inspection file documents in there by that date. License renewals will also be going, at least right now, continuing to be processed as normal, continuing to be filed as normal. Now, there may be some issues, especially for stations with license renewals coming up quickly. Let's see, Indiana and Kentucky have their license renewals due on April 1. Michigan and Ohio have their license renewals due on June 1st. For those stations, that means technically, if you were on the air, you should be running your pre-filing announcements for Michigan and Ohio stations starting on April 1st. If you're not on the air, you obviously can't do it, but when you get the station back on the air, you can make up the missed announcements with a couple of extra announcements. If you don't get back on the air before June 1, because the school is still shut down, file your license renewal in any event by June 1, and you will note later in the public inspection file at the end of the renewal period that the public announcements couldn't be done during the 2 months prior to the license renewal filing because you weren't on the air, do some extra post-filing announcements when that happens. What other issues can I address? A couple of other questions have been asked from college stations from time to time about operating their station remotely. The transmitter site can operate, and it may be technically you've got people who can be keeping the transmitter transmitter in operation. If you are in operation, you do have to be remotely monitoring what's going on with the transmitter, either by some sort of remote monitoring unit or having somebody physically at the transmitter site who can read the meters to make sure that you're not operating in violation of the rules. There can be completely unattended operations where the station automatically shuts itself down within 3 hours if its parameters are outside the licensed values. But you also, in that case, need the ability to shut the station down within 3 minutes should there be any interference to other stations or to any sort of emergency communications. So make sure you've got the ability to do that. I know that some stations can do that just by interrupting the program carrier for a certain period of time, and that will shut down the station. So work something out, but also if you're doing that, be sure that you're monitoring EAS in some way and have the ability to put those EAS notices on the air. Another question that John had sent me yesterday is one that might come up, was whether stations should be considered as essentially emergency responders that should be exempt from any sort of closing order. There is some language in certain parts of the FCC rules that say that essentially radio stations are essential facilities that should keep operating. There were some letters issued recently by Homeland Security Division, circulated by most of the state broadcast associations to their members, that reiterated that fact, that stations are emergency responders and should be given the opportunity to stay open, to have access to their stations and provide the information to the public as necessary about what's going on in their areas. Not all local authorities are going to buy off if you've got that paper from your state broadcast association, or if you've got just the section of the FCC rules that says that emergency responders are or that radio stations are essential facilities. It's just a question of doing your best to convince them that you've got some essential role to play. And I think in most cases you should be able to do that, but that's not always going to be the case. Now I see that there are a bunch of questions that have already been typed here. We're moving to a new location during the transition. How long can we be off the air? You can always be off the air for up to 7 days without any notification to the FCC. After 7 days, you're supposed to notify the FCC that you're off the air. After 30 days, you're supposed to request temporary authority to remain off the air. But again, if your students are not operating and you want to take the station off the air now, you don't have to request any sort of authority, because the FCC has basically said that you're in a recess period.
But with that, David, with that authority, how long would that extend for? If classes are cancelled or people are not coming back onto campus until September, can a college radio station shut down theoretically for months?
Yes. If that's a recess period or vacation period for the school, that's correct. So you could be off the air until September. Let's see, you got shared time.
Right, so they operate September 1st to November 30th and February 1st to April 30th, 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. They say, I don't want to turn the station back over in fear of impacting us in the future. We're running automation, pre-recorded shows, and some satellite programming. Thoughts or feedback?
Yeah, shared facilities can be somewhat problematic, especially if you're sharing with some other non-commercial broadcaster who is continuing to operate, because there are some provisions in the license renewal rules that say that even stations, college stations that are off the air permissibly during periods of recesses could theoretically face license challenges in shared use facilities or in other cases. So it may not be a bad idea if you can figure out ways to keep operating in a shared use facility with license renewal coming up, to do that
Right.
one way or another. But that's a question you really should discuss with your own counsel, because it's going to be unique to every situation.
The next one, David, says, if we allow the EAS to run weekly tests without help from an operator, do we need to include the verbiage at the beginning? Example, this is a test off, or is it fine to just have the warning to run as is from the EAS equipment?
Right, it's okay just to run that, in this time, I think if you can get this is a test of the EAS system up on the air, it's probably not a bad thing, because right now, people are obviously jumpy about what's going on in the world. Anything you can do to reassure folks about that this is only a test of the system is a good thing. I know 2 different states had tornado EAS tests of their entire system scheduled for the next week, and both of them have put it off, just not wanting to activate EAS during this period for fear of setting off some sort of panic. So, I'm not even sure that people are going to be sending along EAS alerts for those reasons, but to the extent that you get them, put on some notification if that's at all possible.
Okay. Next question is from Carol. She is asking, do we need to put our last live show on the quarterly report that we upload to the FCC?
I'm not really sure what that question is asking, but basically your quarterly report is supposed to talk about the most important program or most important issues facing your community in the prior 3 months, and the programming that you've aired on the station during that 3-month period to address those important issues. So even if you're not on the air for this last month of the quarter, presumably you were on the air during January and February, you can talk about the issues that you thought were important while you were on the air and the programs that you ran during that period. There's no requirement in the quarterly issues programs list that you list every single issue responsive programming, just that you list the issue responsive programming that you think is most important, that most substantively address those most important issues that you said are facing your community.
This is a question that a lot of people are wondering about. If classes are being offered online and the faculty have spent the last 2 weeks prepping for the courses to do so, does this also count to the FCC as the school being in recess?
The way that I read the FCC's notice on Thursday, yes. If you're not on campus, you can't be operating the stations.
And our last question, and if anyone has any other questions, you can send that in. John,
I do have 2 questions, but you go ahead, Annabelle. Yeah.
I know of a station that cannot automate the EAS. Can they become not participating and shut it off if there's a national test? And do they need to notify the FCC?
I'm actually not sure the answer to that question. I'll see if I can find it and let you all know to pass along.
Okay, Mark Maven, Seton Hall. Hey there, buddy. Our State Broadcasters Association has recommended its member stations add these codes to their EAS boxes: a CEM, civil emergency message, the CDW, civil danger warning, SPW, shelter in place warning. Our CE did this today, but I'm curious if this is a new federal requirement or simply suggestion coming from the NJBA.
Mark, you ask such hard questions. I should have known it would come from Mark. Let me look at that one as well. The FCC did include a requirement just in the last couple of months to update a couple of test codes or a couple of warning codes in the EAS encoders. I'm just not sure that these particular ones were among those codes that were included in the recent update. I'll see what I can find out and let you know as well. And then I see another question. We're automating about 20 hours per day. Aside from EAS and IDs, are there other requirements that we need to be sure that we're hitting? Not really. Just do the normal requirements. Obviously, all the content requirements are still in place. The emergency doesn't change any of those, but the legal issues are running the IDs at the top of the hour, getting EAS alerts on the air, and being able to monitor the technical facilities just in case something happens, to be able to shut it off or fix it remotely.
So I just have 2 quick questions, and then I think we'll take any more questions over email because we need to move on. 2 questions that are emailed to me. Number 1, okay, so what is the legality if we are not broadcasting decided not to broadcast, but the campus is open officially, but all the classes is actually online and no one's here. Students are not attending campus, but technically the university is open. Does that change? And if so, how does that be impacted or affected if a shelter-in-place order is declared for the place where the radio station is in this case, New York City?
I think that's the same question that Annabelle just asked a moment ago about, if you're doing online classes. I think the intent of the FCC's order on Thursday was that you're still on recess because the students aren't there. As to the shelter-in-place order, again, that's part of the emergency responder issue that I just talked about. In some cases, there are exceptions for the news media to be able to go about doing their job. Whether the local authorities will recognize that for a campus radio station, I think that's going to be a case-by-case basis.
And then one final question then from me that was sent to me via email. So just to be clear then, what are the logging requirements that are still in effect for chief operators, even though they might be under mandatory teleworking orders and working from home?
Yeah, you still have to keep a log, so you still have to be monitoring what's going on and note if the station is operating outside of its license parameters, or if it shuts down, or if it gets EAS alerts. So somehow remotely that's going to have to be monitored in some way or another. So that the chief operator, again, the chief operator is going to have to know whether the station's operating within its license parameters one way or another. So they should be able to keep that log. If they're keeping it on paper, wherever they are, making it available to the FCC if necessary.
David, fantastic. There's one more comment here. Rob, with your connection to G, can we get the FCC to suspend rules for all college, university and community FM, AM stations? That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, we do actually have their email address. So we would think actually about what we would ask actually by knowing full well that we do have access if we need it. So we'll think about that. Go ahead. So go ahead.
And that really is not an FCC call about suspending rules. If you're talking about sheltering in place rules for any sort of college radio station, that's not an FCC call. That's going to be a call of local emergency officials.
David, one last one. This is a good one from Greg. Can I keep the station log at home then if they're asked to shelter in place?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any reason why not. I mean, that is not a public document. You just have to provide it to the FCC if you're asked. So as long as you've got it someplace where you can provide it, I think that's fine.
So what we're going to do is, for further questions, we'll send them to you, David. Also, I would note that there's a great place, obviously, for discussion, ongoing discussion of questions, is, of course, the CBI listserv, which I find is a very helpful resource as well. David, thank you very much for your time today. I think you've been enormously helpful, and not just helpful, but reassuring as well.
Sure.
A lot of us are really genuinely worrying about what's going on. We're in uncharted territory here. So you've been a very calm voice of reason explaining all these things. So we want to thank you very much indeed. And if we could all clap you, we would. So thank you very much for your time today. I want
pleasure.
to turn it over, if I may do so. And thanks once again, of course, to CBI and to David, and of course, to John Morris from CBI, who's been instrumental in allowing David to join us here today. I'd like to turn over now to Annabella Poland, who is going to take it away. Annabella is president of College Radio Day, as well as GM of WMSC at Montclair State University.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I know that I speak for my students when I say that there's a lot of uncertainty going on at our own. There's been mixed messages, right? The students were here till today, and they're being asked to go home, but professional staff is still on campus. For the moment being, I'm able to take whatever they record and put it on the logs, but we already talked yesterday about ways to engage and adapt in a time when we may not have that access. If I was to be sent home, I wouldn't have remote access because our IT technology is actually quite strict, and it's only granted to the chief engineer, who's not going to be doing logs, to be honest. So I want to talk to you about some of the ideas that our students and myself talked about yesterday, and that we implemented a few of, so that you can get, thinking about ways that you can continue to engage the students. I do find that even though it is super important that they graduate and that they go on and we transition to the end of the semester in a successful manner, the stations provide a sense of community, the family. And I know a lot of my own students are distressed over the lack of interaction, and they communicated that to each other. And I want to provide a place where they can continue to do so, even if we're doing so at a distance. So Zoom meetings like this is what we're using to communicate with our student management team, and our general meetings are going to continue to move on in this manner. And we're also going to be using Zoom to record. If you look at Zoom, you have options to go live on YouTube. And there's a couple of my students who are live on here. If you want to unmute yourself, you can say hi. They talked about doing the brunch bunch, and it would be kind of like the Brady Bunch, but it would be them cooking brunch right from home on a weekend, and it will be recorded and going to YouTube. We did a couple of shows over our social media. We had the Sons of Liberty as a political show that airs on Tuesday night, very timely because of the Tuesdays and primaries, which is still going on. And we went live on Instagram and Facebook at the same time. So they are adapting. It's not on air, but they're recording themselves. And as long as I am here, I'm able to put those recordings in. I will expand on that, but I do know that Sean McDonald has a class at 3 p.m. and he is our chief technology connoisseur / nerd, and we say that with pride. And I want to get to him because he has a lot of technologies that perhaps we're using, but not to the extent that we could. And then we can come back and brainstorm about other ways that we can get our content out. I will point out to one place. If you go to Pennsylvania, the station is The River. They have so many followers on Facebook, not as many listeners, but they have a following on social media because of what they do. And I think that this time is what's going to really allow us to maybe find an innovative way to adapt to the changes that we are experiencing. So Sean McDonald from Newman University, Newman Media, take it away.
Can I just say, after Sean has spoken, we will then, of course, be opening up for Q&A, and anyone who wants to contribute can do so. And Annabella, please remind us, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if you can just go ahead and type your question, but if you want to unmute yourself, you can also raise your hand. And I don't mean this because I have so many squares and I have to scroll, but there is an option if you go to participants to raise your hand, and I'm able to see you and I can call your name to ask the question.
Okay, I guess it's time for me. So my class actually starts at 2:40, and instead I've pushed them to do a Zoom call, and we're going to go live on the radio. And that's a great segue for what I want to talk about. Most of our schools have forgotten that we exist, and we're like down here on the totem pole of things to use to get a message out. And right now is a great time, if you are friendly with any of your administration, to remind them that your station exists and that you have a direct line to your student body. Yesterday, for an hour, I had two of our vice presidents on the air, and we Facebook Lived it. I live streamed it to the university's website, and we were over the air and on our live radio feed. And they answered questions for an hour, uninterrupted. We didn't get any music breaks. We were taking messages through Google Voice. I set up a text line. I can't afford to do the fancy text lines that our friends in commercial radio can afford to do. So Google Voice is what I use. And we took questions and we advertised on social media for several days. Ask a question of Dr. DePaolo and Dr. Haug, and they would come in regularly. We were bombarded for literally an hour answering questions, and we would reset with the most important information that they had at the time. As of yesterday, when we went on the air, we were supposed to come back on the 30th of March, and this morning at 10 o'clock, that got pulled, and we were told we were going all online, and we need to now begin to communicate with our students to get them here. And we're doing it again. We're using our radio station and our live feeds, the infrastructures that we have. we're using them again to help answer questions for residents' life and housing. And this is really great technology that can be utilized. And if you have the ability to get it onto, to remote into your station by any means and drop it into your automation system, you can. If not, you have social media. Our social media platforms are literally where our students are living right now. And it's not just on Facebook and Instagram. They're on TikTok. They're on Discord. A lot of them are gamers, and we have no sports happening pretty much worldwide right now, except for esports. Gamers, this is your time, and it's time for us to meet them there. Just while we've been recording, I'm going to play something real fast.
You're tuned back into 98.5 WNUWLP Aston. And we're doing a new show today here. Xavier Canis, Jake Lobrecht on the mic for you, reporting remotely. Xavier out in Ohio, Jake Lobrecht here back in Lansdale, Pennsylvania.
We recorded that live during this phone call using Discord. And Discord is a free app. It's fantastic. You can create a server and add your stations into it. And there's a bot named Craig that you call Craig in, and Craig will record your audio for you. And when you end your chat and you literally type in Craig leave, Craig leaves, and he emails you FLAC files, high quality FLAC audio files that you can then use to drop into your automation system. What I've been doing is I've also been running them through After Effects, and you see a lot of these podcast people at big conglomerates are giving you that wave format that they're seeing on a video, and it matches the vocals. I'm doing the same thing, and I'm asking people to think a little differently. Radio is not just radio anymore. We're media. We're college media. And we have students, we have faculty and staff who are really good in Adobe, and they're good in Premiere, and they're good in After Effects. And Adobe, God love them, just gave us until the end of May. Our school got the thumbs up. Everybody has a license. Your university should be doing the same thing. Your students can download Adobe, the entire suite, and they're licensed through May 30th of this year. It's really awesome. On the other side, the programming stuff, we can definitely use these great tools and connect our students and make the content using Discord or Zoom, because when you record a Zoom file, Annabella is going to be able to do this. At the end of it, she can just pull the audio and make it a podcast. They will definitely just do the work for you, right? Free tools, and they do the work for you. If you have a .edu account for your Zoom, even if this is the first time you're signing up, they're waiving the 40-minute limit. They're waiving the cap of how many people can be in there, clearly, because we have 121 people in this message right now, right? So we're using all the free stuff. If it's free, it's for me. That's got to be our new motto right now. Audacity is free, and we can use it. But Adobe is free, and I would love to use Adobe over Audacity. There's other people in our business, though. It's not just about our programming that we have to worry about. We have to worry about our friends, the artists and the musicians and the labels. And I have some label friends. I told them about this conference call, and they thought this was huge for them to hear. For a majority of us, we are receiving our music through digital delivery. Okay. Google Drive is a fantastic place to set up your, or even OneDrive, are fantastic places for your music team to go in and drop in all of the new music that's being sent to them. That's their assignment. They have music meetings. They should be discussing the music meetings. So if we can have one designated person in our music team download all of the files that are being sent to us, or if label friends are on right now, create us a Google Drive or a Dropbox link and send it to us instead, so that we don't have to do all of that work. You're delivering it to us in an email blast. I think that we should definitely consider you guys being on the front end of it. Make a link, send it to all of us, and we can keep working remotely. We have our music team in their own little private Google Drive account, and they're listening to all the music. And then there's an add to automation folder that I made. And anything that they want to add after they've discussed, it goes in there. And because I am still allowed into the station, I'm considered essential personnel. First time in 12 years, but all right. I'm going to use it. So I'm putting it into the system. That's little bit of the show I just played for you. It's going live at 5 o'clock. But how many of you raise your hands virtually? Don't hit the button because you'll drive Annabella crazy. Could you raise your hand if you have a Comrex device in your station? And somebody that still has access to the station, Comrex has this fantastic app called Field Tap. Okay? Comrex Field Tap. If you have a Comrex device and you have a board operator, you can call in and it's darn near studio quality. It makes it sound like you are doing a remote broadcast with an Access portable or a brick or a link from somewhere far away. It's already free. Your stuff is designed to do it. And our friends at Comrex, techies at comrex.com, they'll help you through it if this is the first time you've ever used the app. These are all free, fantastic opportunities for us to think differently. When I met with my students earlier today, right after the email came out that we were going online only, we processed immediately. Within 45 minutes, we had a 20-person Zoom call, and we let them talk. And then I told them, all right, so you can wallow for the amount of time you need to feel sorry for yourself, and then it's time for you to kick butt and take names and start creating content. The one thing that we have to remember as broadcast professionals here is that the word professional in our quality for audio and video has to be thrown out the window now. All of the reports that you see of somebody calling into a cable news channel, they're doing it on Skype. And we can't be guaranteed that they're going to have a great Skype connection. They can't get to a ReadyCam anymore because they don't have the ability to do so. So we need to throw out the totally awful quality, but still have some sort of standards. They have to use headphones if they're going to do something. We can't have loop back. We need to be doing all of these things and throwing out oh, that doesn't sound that great. They sound a little hollow. Well, we have free Adobe Audition now, and we can run it through a multi-band compressor and try to fix that a little bit. But the whole broadcast quality aspect, we need to be a little bit more lenient with, because we're using what we have, and what we have is great content. Students are emailing us audio files like an audio diary, and they're telling us how much it sucks and how terrible this feels. But at the same time, that's great content that we can be getting out there, and we can be creating community. College media, it's our time to step up and be resourceful. We use these things for fun. Why shouldn't we begin to use them for professional quality broadcasting? If you have more ideas, throw them out there in the chat, or please throw them out there through the listserv. Let's get something going. And if you're recording good content, I'm volunteering as tribute to create a Google Drive account that is open and has no limits, because it's for Google for schools. Share your content with each other. If you can't get into the station, but you know you have great content, then try to program it that way. Put it out there on the different socials. Put it on your podcast page. Share your content, because everybody wants to hear what's happening, but everybody is tired also of hearing of all the crap. We want to be doing Bohemian Rhapsody style Galileo all through this, all right? Let's be doing the same thing. We should be using these different technologies to create content and reach across the country, reach across the world, and create something. College radio, it's your time to be the resistance to COVID-19, and it's our time to rise up and have a lot of fun doing it. Peace.
John, absolutely outstanding.
Questions on the
Annabella,
chat?
do you want to add to that, Annabella?
Yeah, I mean, so we do this for a Vinyl-thon and College Radio Day, and I started this thing called the College Radio News Network with the idea of collaboration, because my students wanted to cover the South Dakota pipeline, and I was like, well, how are we going to cover that? We're not there, we're not on the ground, and it's just hard, right? So we've done a number of projects where we collaborated with Palomar in San Diego about immigration. I collaborated with UTA Radio. So this is our time to come together and offer something that is across the board. Everybody's dealing with this in the nation. Put that to good use. We can send it to Sean, have access to the Google Drive. We can put it on the SoundCloud page. This is how we distribute it, not just here in the US, but we also have access to stations that participate in World College Radio Day. And that's like, the last time was 33 countries, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. But in the past, it's been as many as 43, and it's growing. So if you wanted to talk to someone from, Italy, the area where it's the hardest hit, Rob has access to that. If you wanted to talk to Argentina, we can communicate. This can happen at a global level, and the stations that remain on air or are able to record and put in the logs can get this content out, but it can also go on all of our socials. And we would have to think as a team, what's the best way to hashtag this as all of college radio, right? Dealing with this situation. But just know that that's yet another resource to collaborate and share. It's a very buzzy word right now. And I will tell you, there's a lot of money being given for collaboration. So maybe this is the time to come together and apply for some funding and get our students to collaborate and work with each other.
No, I want to jump in because people are talking about music and all. I am not speaking of music. Okay. I am speaking of pure programming content that we are doing with voice. Okay. That being said, if you have the ability to do some of these remote abilities, and you can log into your automation system, you can still program from home. Maybe you're still allowed to go into the station. Have your students create a playlist for them and have them record on a voice memo app. Here's my first break. It's voice tracking without the voice tracking capability, okay? They can still do things live. They can still build a playlist, and if it's in your automation system, then why not schedule it that way? If you have a music team that can help with that, let's find some ways to do so. But doing a remote voice track and then having a playlist that somebody can build, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great way to keep that normalcy for these students. And if they have the ability to go live, you have a board operator. Again, I'm tribute here because I'm the only one allowed in. And I don't mind. It's my job. I'm going to sit here, and if they're on for 8 hours back to back, I'm going to be playing things back to back for them. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Also, I saw another person about wave files through VoIP. I'm also using Google Voice for people to leave us voicemails, and then we can take those voicemails and turn them into content that can be shared on air and on social media. So I think that anything you can use that's free or that you've been using to avoid telemarketers, think about how can I use that for television and radio now?
Yeah, and so there's a number of questions here. I know that my husband owns a record label, so I get to see both sides of the coin, and he has bands coming out like this month. A lot of this algorithm stuff can go through Spotify. If your radio station doesn't have a Spotify account to create playlists and just promote the music and format that they do, now is the time to go in and put that to work and have your team, just put some effort on that. Not everyone has access to the radio station. I'm here for now, but we don't know what's going to happen next. I don't think that this is over by any means. But is there anyone that wants to just chime in, if you want to, like, one at a time, in ways that you see your students collaborating? I feel like it's still our duty as leaders to guide them through this time. Again, I keep hearing like we need to get to the successful completion of the semester. And yes, that's true, but also for everyone's, health, we need to also monitor what's going on there. And I think productive time is the best kind of time. And again, using this time to think about ways that we can collaborate and just rethink of ourselves.
So we do have about 10 minutes left before we want to conclude. And I think it would be good if we do hear from other voices as well. If anyone does want to say anything, how's the best way to do this, Annabella?
Well, people are asking questions here. They're saying that, yes, we should share and collaborate, share content. I'm saying I'm looking into using Microsoft Teams to record radio program for a professor's management class. I can take the audio and put it into our system. We are asking listeners to leave voicemails with song dedications on their VoIP phone system, emails them the WAV file, and then they can queue it into automation. That's fantastic, by the way. Then useful free information source, we're giving consumeraffairs.com/radio daily updates and topical There's also an FTP delivery if you're looking to have it on the automation system. Someone else said we air a weekly program titled Health 411, hosted by Rider University's Health Studies Institute. And that's a message and now strictly focused on the COVID-19. If anyone's interested, one thing we're doing is several local artists loyal to the station are doing performances in their home. That's another thing, guys. Like, how do we do this, right? Like, is someone in your team really good at singing, and can we have them live? It's live from their basement. Just use your social media, all of it. The kids are mostly on Instagram. I will say that. Their parents are mostly on Facebook. Just use that space to go live and continue to create content for your followers. Some people use Slack, and they're using the random channel a lot more for fun chats and memes. We also at the station use Discord for our team, and so we do have channels, and it allows you to do a voice channel as well, which again you can record. Nate from Tinderbox is saying we will be using Google Drive and Disco as the primary source for music delivery moving forward. If there's anything we can do to ease the access to our artists, let them know. I would like to hear from others. We talked about a lot of ways to go live. I would say that for me, the most exciting thing is that Zoom is unlimited to us now, and we can take this live to Facebook or to YouTube. I think they get with the times and get to go live on Instagram too, but you know, you could record it and then put it on Instagram TV. So anyone else who wants to chime in from the team, just unmute yourself.
Yeah, now we're going to open up to anyone
Dawn,
else.
I see Dawn has a hand up. All right.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I like the thumbs up. So Dawn Benford with WQSU at Susquehanna University in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Our students extended spring break, and now we're going to be starting online classes on March 23rd, and they'll hopefully be coming back to class on Monday, April 6th. I think that's the 6th. So what we've been doing since this all started is we have been doing what you all are talking about, and that is having the students now do some recording of some voice track cuts at home. I send them some information. They also gather their own information as well. They send them to me, put them in a Dropbox. I insert them then into our new automation system. So there's more voices on the air relaying the information. We've also, like you've talked about too, and maybe this would just help some other stations as well, we're trying to strengthen that bond between the campus community and the outside community. So we've created a list, something similar to what the commercial radio stations are doing, of support your local business. You know, shop local, support local. And it's a list of the restaurants. Of course, we're not saying this on the radio, but we are doing it on our Instagram and Facebook pages of what restaurants are open and are offering takeout, and then their phone number with that as well, what their limited hours are, some other businesses that are open to that are considered essential from the governor's office. So we're trying to relay that information, and my students have been putting that together and creating this list, and then we share it on our Instagram and our social media pages as well. Just some way that we're just trying to get that information out and disseminate that information to the public.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So we had a message from David. It says, be sure to get permission before you rebroadcast any segment from another station. That's of course for sure. So Sean, we're gonna have that on the Google Drive so people can just sign it. When
Can I ask David Oxenford one more question? David, from what you've heard us discussing all these ideas, are there any implications that, any ideas or thoughts that have come to you since we've been discussing these ideas? Anything we should be cautious about? Like you just mentioned getting permission if we're going to rebroadcast anything, for example.
Yeah, the only thing I was concerned about was copyright issues. There was some discussion about uploading music files to various cloud storage areas. Just be careful doing that when you're doing it for an internal meeting among staff about choosing music. That's probably fair use, but make sure your students understand they can't take those files, download them to their own computer and start circulating them around. That could get you into all sorts of issues. Same thing with sharing many other music files or any other copyrighted files that you don't get permission from the creator to share with other people. Someone had suggested taking clips from a TV station or cable system and using them on the air. It looked like in that case they had gotten permission from the TV station because an alumni had worked there, but just wanted to make sure that nobody else took the idea and started rebroadcasting their TV station or something from CNN or some other cable news source and putting that on the air without getting permission explicitly from the organization that created that content.
Yeah, so David, the way we've done stuff with the College Radio News Network, we always, the stations that usually participate in College Radio Day say, you know, their tagline will be, you know, for WMSC and the College Radio News Network available, and then that's kind of our way of receiving. It's news though. We don't do music or any copyrighted stuff. It's stuff that they're sharing with each other. I wanted to bring up something that I don't know how many of you have NextGen or RCS as their automation, but I talked to them because I wanted to see if there was any access, and they sent me an email saying that there is a direct option to have a remote connection, that it requires an NG OneCast license, which is worth $700. However, the university has sent us an email that if in order to operate, we need to get specific equipment, that they're making some, you know, they have some leniency on the budget, even if they're not allocated to where they need to go. So if you have that, contact your NextGen rep and they can set you up. Is $700 for that license, and installing the software, you know, a remote studio bundle that would allow you to go live from a phone will cost $3,200. But it's options, and if you have the funds, if the university is making those funds available, maybe now is the time to ask for them.
David Murph asked the question, can uploading content to a place intended for it to be shared among stations constitute permission?
You know, I think it's, I think if it's very clear that that's what the purpose of this site is, for you to upload content to be shared among stations, that would be perceived as permission. Just make very sure that that's what the terms of use for that site are clear, probably even more than just the terms of use in some click-on document that you have to open up, you know, probably in the headline or the homepage of whatever site you're uploading things. Make that very clear that that's the purpose of the site is for material to be shared among other users.
We have just a few more minutes, couple minutes. Does anyone else want to say anything at this point or contribute? Annabella, do we see anyone?
No, I don't have any hands up, but if you don't know how to get your hands up, just unmute yourself.
Okay. My question is, and I feel pretty lost, frankly. We don't have automation. So short of me going in there, now I'm assuming I have permission to go into college. I'm trying to find out later today what the exact policy is going to be with students, because technically we're online now. But short of me going in there and doing 8-hour shifts or whatever, playing music that, playing shows that students email me, is there anything else I can do without automation?
Sean?
Sorry, I'm also in class now, so I'm trying to.
Oh, okay. Annabella?
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard. So if you don't have a way to automate your content, it's just really hard. The only way that I can tell you, we have worked on our transmitter sometimes, or like working on the server. And the way we do things is we normally go to the transmitter site and we put a USB, and we can have a loop as big as the USB. Like, so if you had a whole drive with content in there that you pre-prepare, my engineers usually bypass the station and do that while they're working on the server. That still requires you to come in, and that could, you know, something could go off and you're not there. So honestly, that's a tough one.
Okay, yeah, I'll deal with it. I'll figure out something, you know, like you said, we're all in this together.
Right. So the thing is, I'm here right now, so my station is on. When I leave campus, my engineer is going to be home dealing with another number of issues that the building has. Is very technical. So to ask them to look for the levels of the transmitter and all of that stuff, it's just hard. So we probably will shut down the transmitter for the time being and focus solely on like the podcasting style to send stuff over socials and our website.
Jim, if there's a computer that's attached to your board that can go over the air, I know that Sean from The Wolf just said the same thing I was about to say. But there's some free radio automation systems like Radio DJ and even a Windows media player, and you have the files like from old shows. You can put them into a Windows media player as long as that computer can get over the air. That's automation on the cheap. It's like you making a playlist on your phone. As long as it's stuff that you already have done or have like permission to broadcast, and it's not streaming. It's literally you have the files on your machine. Just getting them into a playlist that can get to air is another way of doing it.
At this time, I think we're going to wrap up for now.
Yeah, I got to go, guys. Sorry,
Sean,
I'm in class.
Sean. Okay, so let me just say this, a couple of things. I just want to wind this down, but I want to say this. It's very clear to us, we've just been texting amongst ourselves, that we need to do this again. We're all in this together. Obviously, if indications are what they are going to be, we could be under lockdown or we could be off campus for some significant period of time. This is going to mean that we are not going to be face-to-face with our students, with our colleagues, with each other for quite some while. So I suggested we have another meeting. Annabella, though, you have a concrete idea in the meantime as to what we can do?
Yeah, so it's inspired. It's not original, but it is original to college radio. If every one of you saw the video of all the Italians sort of singing over the weekend in their isolation, I feel like this is our opportunity as college radio to come together with a college radio podcast. And I was thinking about a name, and I thought, college radio, the resistance. We might be taking out of the station, we might be taking out of the air, but we're going to continue to strive to bring content and continue to showcase what our students do best. So this will be an official call for a collaboration. I have a number of files from my students who are very short clips, 30 seconds, how they're dealing, how they're handling, what their emotions are. If we could get one a week from our students and share it with each other, we can all put together like sort of this podcast about how we're dealing with it. I do feel that if we continue to deal with this, there's going to be a range of emotions. I also think that we can find inspiration in all singing together like the Italians did. So if you do feel that that's something you want to do, we can take that with the Google Drive that Sean is going to do. You can also email the College Radio News Network. That email, it's collegeradionewsnet@gmail. I will post it here. But I do think that seeing the amount of people that are interested in continuing this, we do need to collaborate, and we need to put something that is all of us together, talking about how we are dealing with our issues, how perhaps we are preparing, how things are evolving. I do not think that this is the time to be the voice of the CDC. That's not us, but we're just talking about us.
Okay, I just want to finish then and say I want to thank you, all of you, for coming along today. I want to thank David Oxenford. I want to thank Annabella. I want to thank Sean. I want to thank CBI, John Mars particularly, for really getting involved and collaborating here. This is what we do. We come together in times like this. For more information, resources available, I recommend, obviously, everyone join the CBI listserv, email listserv. That is a great place for discussion and to ask and answer questions. radiosurvivor.com. Jennifer Waits does a weekly column as well as other stories on college radio, and of course her own website, collegeradio.org. We're doing what we can. It's not updated on a daily basis, but we do occasionally put things on there. And I would say this, there is going to be an announcement about Vinyl-thon going out later today. In a nutshell, for those stations that are able and still can do it, we will do it on April 18th. For those who want to participate instead on June 20th, which is when Record Store Day has now been rescheduled to, we will also celebrate Vinyl-thon then, but for those stations who obviously cannot do either date, we understand that as well. So an email will be going out for those people who've registered for that. For today, thank you for your time. Let's try and do this again next month. In the meantime, all of us send best wishes to each and every one of you, and take care, my friends. Take care. These are difficult times, but hang in there. Annabella, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I really have been looking forward to seeing some of the faces I haven't seen at CBI, and I hope we can stay together perhaps on a bi-weekly call. We're going to keep it to an hour so that we know everyone's time is important. If you need to reach out to us, I just put the email address on the chat, but let's continue the conversation also on CBI, you who are there. Thanks again, and stay safe, everybody.
Hang on, David Oxford Ford just wants to have the last word. Over to you, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as another resource, I have been posting updates on my blog as the FCC comes out with new rulings related to the current situation. Broadcastlawblog.com is the URL, so check it out.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.